Okay, well, we will start a new series of lectures, 4 in total. And this series is also the end series of what we have started on February, giving a complete range of lectures in the light of 80 million years Theosophy and 150 years Theosophy. And we have tried to present to you the whole combination of all the work of Blavatsky, what she has done, the masters, the chelas, and everybody was cooperating, who was cooperating in it, to show what the real activity was. It was not only making books and presenting books, but it was much more involved in it. And when I give my first lecture this evening, then I think we will speak keeping the ideals of humanity ensouled. And that is one of the basic things what is really playing a very important role in it. Because if we say Theosophy of Theosophia, we don't have in mind books, publications as just a single thing to focus on, but there is another big important thing going on. And that is what we always have used in this series, the Lords of Compassion and Wisdom, as the big power behind all the activities. And what I like to do is I like to show you how that works and what is our role in it. What can we do? What is our responsibility if we have ideas, if we have interest in it, and what do we do with it, and how should we take part of it? Yeah. So what I have this evening is, let's say, 3 themes. Yeah. First, how does the series fit into the series of 350 Theosophy lectures from January? But January is the Dutch start, February is the English one. What are the ideals and where do they come from? That is a very important one. And what do people need to keep them ensouled? And that is, of course, a very important one. Keep them alive, you can say, is another word for it. Yeah. So what I like to explain here in this lecture is that how that inspiration works, what is coming from the Lords of Wisdom and Compassion, and how it can be received, because that is, of course, key in it. Huh? If you see the Theosophical Society, I think most of you will know, of course, but it is just to make it very clear. The Theosophical Society is the channel that the masters themselves formed to give people the ability to spread lovely ideals and seeds of spiritual wisdom throughout the world, providing them with noble hope and great peace. So, and there you see a cooperation, what started in 1875 for, let's say, the Western world. But if you remember the first lecture of Erwin Bomas, there we have already explained that Lord is active 18 million of years, and over all that 18 million of years, they have done, you can say, more or less in principle, the same type of work and try to inspire humanity. And that results in all different type of religions, philosophy, mystery schools, Plato, Pythagoras, you name them, yeah? And now we are here today and see how can we deal with it. A very important thing is what I called here the free will. The free will is what every being have, every conscious being has free will. Of course, in, let's say, size and power and form, according to his, let's say, development, yeah? An animal have a different type of free will than a human being. Gods have another type of free will than human beings, and so on. And Another type is not the good word. What I mean, another, let's say, area, another field where they can roll out that free will. There is a very important character, a very important saying in this whole lecture of this evening, but also in the coming one. The gods inspire, but do not force. That is a very fundamental principle. A very fundamental principle on that from spiritual point of view, spiritual development, you never will learn if something is really forced up us. So there was no free will. Our free will is set aside. It is really, let's say, with forced put on us, and we are not free in what we have to develop. And that is not the way we can develop ourselves, and it is not the way that we can learn. We need that freedom to use the principles, exercise the principle, study the principles, and maybe even sometimes going contrary the principles to experience what real harmony is and what we have to take care of it. Yeah. So, and this is a very fundamental day. Everybody who is a teacher in school or have to train other people knows that by force, of course, you can have the effect that they are able to reproduce what you enforced on them for a couple of months, half year, a year, and then gradually it fade out and they lost it. If they really understand what it means and they have really experienced it by themselves, dus building the inside view, building that Buddhi point of view, then it become a part of themselves and they will never lose it again. A very important thing, of course, is that the message of the Lords of wisdom and compassion must be well understood. And you can say, of course, yeah, logic. But if we see already in the 150 years, what is built over the 150 years as misunderstanding, wrong interpretations, let's say extensions connected on the teachings of the Lords of Wisdom and Compassion, what is our personal ideas, personal intentions, and so on. And that is really a lot. And you see even nowadays, after 150 years, what in itself is not much, 150 years, that we still have to put a lot of effort to maintain the original ideas, let's say, accessible in society, in forms of lectures, in forms of courses, in form of publications, and maintaining the original publications. You can ask yourself, what is the particular reason that we speak in this title from this series over 2000 years? Yeah, 2000 years is not much. Yeah, in itself, you can say that is a very short period. That all has to do with what is just below it, the Messianic cycle. That is the key in this. If we see what the coming 2000 years means, that cycle, then we see, and we have learned from Blavatsky, that when she was starting in 1875, she already starts to speak about cycles coming and should start very soon, of course in her time. She was speaking about cycles. And we learn also that she said that in 1908, several cycles coincident, or well, there is a synchronization between a different amount of cycles. And then the lessons what you learned, the information what you learned is from, it is important to see what the characteristic of a cycle is, yeah? And we speak in this case about the Messianic cycle, is one of 22,160 years, yeah, and there will a new be started, yeah, but 2000 is a very small part, yeah. We have to realize, of course, that there are periods before this start of this cycle and periods, of course, afterwards, yeah. The whole series of this Sunday evening lecture starts to speak about 80 million of years. Yeah, so 80 million of years is much more, of course, than the 2000. Yeah, so the 2000 is a particular period to focus on. Yeah, so that is what we like to do. So in this lecture, we think about the 2000 because it is a start of a new cycle. And cycles have always a very strong effect on the opportunities we have, the challenges we have, the lessons what can be learned, the development, what we can do, etc. Sorry, now. Okay, if you want to understand that whole idea of cycles and all the impact on it, I just summarized the three fundamental principles of the Seeker doctrine. Yeah, so infinite of boundlessness. So then you understand certainly that a cycle is just, you can say, a certain period. Yeah. The second fundamental principle speak about cyclic motions, periodically appearance and disappearance of universe. Yeah. And the third one is the fundamental identity of all souls with a universal oversoul, growth according to the cyclic and karmic laws. So what is say here is that cycles is a certain activity what is able to, you can say, learn us lessons, generate us lessons, and that are all that cycles are part of that infinity, the boundlessness. So there is not a particular cycle in the idea of an absolute start or stop. Yeah. And the fact is that everything what takes place in all these cyclic activities, motions, are all having the fundamental identity of all souls. So there is a, let's say, fundamental principle for them. Als je dus better want to know from theosophical point of view, what are cycles? Cycles is of course a very well-known term in our society as well, in technique and so on. There's no problem at all. Yeah, but if we see it from theosophical point of view, and that very fundamental idea from everything is life, yeah, that is, let's say, the key idea behind the first fundamental propositions, everything is life, then are all that cycle activities are periods of conscious beings. To say in other words, conscious beings as project, activate, are, let's say, active and generate by being active that cycle activity. A very simple example is just see ourselves. Human being, yeah? You can see we will be born. We have, let's say, a healthy life, maybe for 80, 90 years or something like that. And in that life period, we are active, we developed our consciousness, etc., etc. But we do that in very strong cooperation with a lot of other beings what have life cycles smaller and what takes part in, let's say, take part and help us to build the vehicle we need in our life cycle. So you see that idea of the second fundamental principle, cyclic motion, is means cycle in cycles, beings in beings, with all different life, let's say, durations, life periods. They help each other, they work together with each other, and give each other the opportunity to build experience and develop themselves. Every cycle has an start and an end phase. Yeah? And there is a start number of years and a stop number of years. And Dr. Brugge says, for instance, every cycle has something like 10% start and 10% stop. So if you look around, you will never see a boom, a start at once and a stop at once. It is really building up and building, running out. Yeah. Here I bring something simile and circular motion. Simile. Why? If there is no development, it is a circle motion. That means you make no progress, and after a certain cycle period, you are coming back on the same spot where you started. If there is development, then it is more like a spiral. Then you make that circular motion, and if you're coming back more or less on the start, you have learned a lot of lessons, you have a greater wisdom, you understand the things much better, and it looks like that you are coming back on the same point, but in fact, it is a spiral. You are sitting on a higher level of consciousness. Yeah? So that is an important idea. No development, you can say circle motion, development, a spiral, because we are a little bit further. Yeah? Every cycle has its recurring moment, a retake, you can say. Yeah? A second chance on a higher level, or a redo on the same. Yeah? A second chance if you have no development, a redo, more or less, let's say if you have made development to start to learn a little bit more on top of what you have already learned. Yeah. And then, of course, we have the famous cycle of the Messianic cycle. And then, of course, we have noch very long cycles, what we called the Yugas. I will show you later on the slide to give you a little bit of idea what the length in human years is where we have to deal with. Why is it essential to have knowledge of cycles? It is essential to have knowledge of cycles because you know that in a cycle there are certain opportunities and that if you want to have a, let's say, positive development, you like to learn something, that you really have to make use of that moment in that cycle. Just look on our school systems. We are in the class. In the class, we learn a particular material, particular things we have to learn. And we see very easily if in the class, if you are not doing your best and you slip behind, most of the time it is very hard to come to gain the slip, find your connection again and doing your best for going on and not coming behind. So knowing that cycle is a very important thing. Knowing also what are the opportunities in a cycle is also very important. Yeah. If you look in nature, elke farmer knows what he has to do in a certain moment of the year cycle. Yeah. And I know if he is not doing it in that particular moment in that cycle and he is too late, that it has no much use anymore. Yeah. If we have a look on the Messianic cycle, that is what I already say, 2160 years. It is a large cycle, a cosmic year, speaks Blavatsky about it. The cycle of the precession of the equinox, totally 12 times 2160, is 25,920 years. So that is a very big cycle. You can say divided in 12 shorter cycles, 12 Messianic cycles. Yeah. The Great Cycle is one of the fundamental and most important of the major periods of cosmic history and evolution. The Messianic cycle is therefore a recurring time period at the beginning and the end of which the Lords of Wisdom make a great effort. And that great effort is that they send a messenger in that cycle what has a certain amount of it has a certain duty. If we see the previous Messianic cycle, we speak about the birth of Jesus. He starts a certain impulse, what is running the 2160 years, and has a very particular taste over that time. Yeah, and the cycle just started. You can say Blavatsky was coming as the messenger of the current Messianic cycle. So Blavatsky gives an amount of information on the beginning, let's say, of that cosmic school year, yeah, over the 2160 years, yeah. Try to do that, and now you understand also a little bit why we have in this series speaking about 2000 years future. We have already passed 160, so 2000 years about is remaining for us to be active in it, in this cycle. And the challenge, of course, is to work together to understand the messenger of that cycle, learn the lessons, what we can be learned in this period. There are very much big cycles, yeah. That is then the Yugas, yeah. And there are 4, Krita, Tetra, Dvapar, and Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is the most well-known one, and that is the cycle we have just entered in. That is a very long one. Want if you see, there is dus an indication what speaks about 1200 divine years, what is equal to 4320 human years. Yeah? No, sorry, 432,000 human years. Sorry, yeah? All these cycles together takes a very, very long period, and that is 4 million years, yeah? And a bit. These cycles are very well known in Buddhist and Hindu literature, and also known in Theosophical literature, but not too much are outside, yeah? If we focus a little bit on that Kali Yuga, yeah? Kali Yuga, you will find in our literature, is a yuga what have quite some impact. It is called the Iron Yuga, and iron means tough, yeah? We learn that in Kali Yuga, everything goes much faster. If we compare that with the God divine Yuga, there is everything slow, everything is relaxed, takes much more time to, and so on and so. Kali Yuga is faster, but we learn also faster. The advantage is that if we do something, we get, you can say, almost immediately a reflection of what you do. We get a feedback of what you do, yeah? And some people say, yeah, but okay, why do we have to learn in that severe conditions? Yeah, and here is denk ik a very important one. As a very important question is why do we have to learn, yeah, in that limited situation? Yeah, fast, everything works out very quickly, etc., etc. Yeah, we have to realize this because we learn to see what is the effect from what we do. Yeah, if we do something, we can see around us there is a result, what we call most of the time karmic consequences. Yeah, and if we take a very good eye for that, we can learn fast. If we don't take a good eye for the effects and we go on, then the feedback becomes stronger. and stronger and stronger. And then you will see that if we don't listen, the feedback can be very severe until we start to realize that it is important to do something, yeah, to correct our behavior in relation with nature and all what lived in. A very good example is, many examples, by the way, is in the way we are living now. If you look to all the CO2 discussions, all the effect on the forest, all the effect on our water, and so on, you see that everybody is almost convinced that we should do it on another way. The only problem is we don't do it. But that means that the pressure of nature on our behavior will grow and grow until we learn our lessons. Yeah. The inspiration from the Lords of Wisdom and Compassion helps to maintain freedom of thoughts. And here we are a little bit an extension, what I just said a little bit before, that is saying, God, don't force, but inspire. Yeah? This is what the inspiration we get from the Lord and compassion, that is to maintain our freedom, because the freedom of thoughts we need to have the opportunity to learn our lesson and to develop all the characteristics in ourselves. Yeah, not punishment, not severe this and that. No, we have to learn. We have to understand what is going on, and for that is freedom of thoughts is needed. Look in system where freedom of thoughts is not a common good. You will see that people has a lot of problems to learn because they are not allowed to do a lot of things and so on and so on. Yeah. So 1875, the start van Blavatsky in New York for the Theosophical Society, was dus een start, een preparation for the new cycle, what was later on started, the Messianic cycle. Yeah. And of course, if you have to prepare something, it is always better to do it before than you wait until it is already there. Yeah. So that new cycle in 1889 is then the date from where it starts running. And the wisdom that we have to develop is necessary to avoid problems. If we are not develop wisdom and we continue in making the same type of mistakes, you have then the typical situation what I have addressed before. It is a cycle activity, we make no progress, and we end at the end of the cycle on exactly the same spot, and you can say, we have learned nothing. So that whole story of cycles, Messianic cycles, also mean that 2000 years from now, there will be the moment for the next messenger to come. Yeah? So, and there is a lot of discussion in the theosophical world. You can ask yourself, one of the question is, imagine yourself, if we have learned our lessons very well, will that messenger need it? Or if we have learned our lessons very well, is that messenger coming in our society very gradually, and we see, recognize him, accept him, and we see that as a very just common thing. Yeah, we are welcome him. And if we don't recognize him, yeah, because we are absolutely not living from wisdom and learn our lessons, we will miss him. Yeah, and there are examples. There are certain cultures what have not recognized the previous one, Jesus the Nazarene, because they say, no, there's no messenger, and so on, and so on. Yeah, but according to theosophical information, Jesus was a messenger. Yeah. If you look here, what the ideals and where do they come from? That is a very important one. Yeah. And I will work this out for you. Okay, we have learned in the fundamental principles, everything is consciousness, everything moves, voluntary, that is the second one. I just resume the fundamental principles, the infinity, the cyclid, voluntary, always activity, and the third, the fundamental identity. That is a very important lesson. That means that we have in potential, in essence, all that information in us. What I have tried to do, and that is just a piece of artwork for me, I have created this diagram. And what I have done in this diagram, I brought together a number of theosophical ideas, diagrams. For instance, the diagram, the Tetractys of Pythagoras, is a very well-known one. Yeah? The idea that monads in hierarchical structure and their dynamic cooperation, also a very fundamental idea. And in the orange background, I have put down a number of principles. Vohat, soba, vat, emanation, evolution, development, yeah, ideation, ethnic Buddhic, cosmos thinking ability, ideas, manifestations of ideations. So what I have tried to do is bring together a number of ideas to make clear for you that if we speak about this diagram, and let's say I start with the top, and if you look, you will see that the top has a white outer circle, and in that circle you see the white, ethnic, the yellow, the Buddhic, the blue, Manasic, and the red, the kamic characteristic. So what I like to say by this is that every dot in that Tetractys, every monad is having all the characteristics, and the outer circle, I like to make clear what characteristic on that particular moment, on that level, is, let's say, expressed. So the top, the white outer one, is the atmic. One level lower is the outer circle, yellow is the Buddhic. Level lower, the blue, the Manasic. And on the bottom, the red one, the kamic, and the lower principles. And the orange fields give information how that communication tussen that monads in this construction operates, how it works. Yeah? Emanation, the field of attraction from the top for, let's say, monads on the lower levels. Yeah? Give them the opportunity to, the lower ones, the opportunity to go through evolution, to develop themselves. Yeah? And the other one, ideation, make clear that from the top there is a field. And you can say, let's call it thinking, let's call it a radiation, yeah, that is from the top and will be sent to a lower level and will be received on the lower levels as ideas, yeah. And ideas are then manifested ideations. I will work this out a little bit later as well. Maybe if you see this, and keep in mind that it is just a creation from me, but it is all ideas what you will find in the Theosophical literatures, certainly from the Point Loma line. If you see this, God sinks the world into being, gives you immediately a little bit of a clue, yeah, that there is a force going out, and most of the time we call it emanation, and that emanation is a force what collects other beings, bring them together, and get them working together and helping to manifest something. Yeah. So the expression of their higher thoughts are our ideals. So we receive them. Dus the higher consciousness inspire the lower consciousness. Inspiration that we capture and express in a limited way as our ideas. And here I work it a little bit out. Yeah. So from ideation to idea. Ideation, between brackets, in action, create and send. Yeah. And to be able that, the ability, the power, the process of forming ideas on a high level. Cosmic ideation refers to the ability, an aspect of cosmic egoic, yeah? And also the more concrete reality represented by Mahat. So what I try to say there is that if you are sitting on a high level in the hierarchy, then you have that opportunity to create ideas, and by creating that ideas, you send them as well. Yeah? Ideas. And ideas, that is then something what we do as human beings. We receive and think about what we receive. Yeah? And by doing this, we send as well. So by receiving and thinking ideas and start thinking about it, we will send them on our terms as well. Yeah? And then, of course, there is a very important number of remarks. Our ability to implement cosmic prototypes. Yeah? And then we give a transcendental, personal, limited expression to that. So that means that we are able not better to express what we receive as what we have developed in ourselves. Yeah? That is the reason that I say depend on our development and mood. Yeah? If we are in a bad mood, we are also not able to express it, yeah, and do something with it. So there is you can say, a structural responsibility for us, yeah. When the ideations are there, yeah, we receive the ideas as far as we're able. We think about it. By doing this, we send them as well. Keep in mind, if we receive them and we are not thinking in the right way about them, that means that we are sending them also in the wrong way. Yeah, there is no opportunity for us to say, okay, I will thinking about it and I will not send. Thinking and send is almost a synonym for each other. Yeah. Plato speaks also about the ideas, and he speaks about the fact that he say, okay, forms through the action of cosmic energy guided by ideation, working in matter. And he emphasized also the sometimes, as he expressed it, that some cosmic ideas are very poorly integrated in our world. But that is a very important thing. This whole process is also one of the explanations you can see. If the Lords of wisdom and compassion radiate ideas, try to inspire us, that is one. And the big question is, how far are we able to receive this, do something with it, maintain the principles, and passing it on? So, cosmic ideas, receiving, yes, in a certain way. But how are we going to receive them? With the capabilities, of course, we have developed up to now, we can only receive the ones that are compatible with our character. So you cannot receive something what is too far away from you. Yeah. Then, of course, determined by the transmission between sender and receiver. So here you have the big question. You have to, let's say, tune in with the sender, yeah, and be able to tune in with the sender to have a very good example, now to be a very good receiver of it. That is what we do if we study literature, Some people say, oh, I like Blavatsky very much. Some people say, no, I prefer the Peruke. And that is already an example that they have tuned in on a certain characteristic. Yeah? That is also the positive side of the fact that we, in the Point Loma traditions, we have a number of speakers on the Wednesday evening and the Sunday evening, and not only always the same one. If we want to receive more, we have to train ourselves. And keep in mind, according to the first fundamental principle of the second doctrine, we have everything in us latent, laying asleep. We have to wake it up. And of course, ideas can be selfish, implemented. We see a big profit of it. Yeah. It can be selfless, so that we use it for general use and the profit for everybody. Yeah. And the question is, are selfish ideals really ideals? Because if we see that the ideals we receive from the Lord from wisdom and compassion, that are they are colored. The main characteristic is, of course, universal characteristic, universal brotherhood for everybody, yeah, no exceptions. So, and if you start to receive this and start to use it for your own good, then you can really ask yourself what you are doing. And then you start to, you can say, to trim down the universal ideas, the Buddhic information, very tuned to an own good and so on. Yeah. The question is what we hear, yeah, what needs to be done to keep the ideals of humanity ensouled. Yeah, and that is then, let's say, the subtitle for the lecture of this evening. If you understand that the Lords of Compassion and Wisdom transmit, radiate that super Buddhic ideas, universal brotherhood, yeah, we receive them. And then the question is, what should we do to keep them alive, to maintain the characteristics from the source where they are coming from? Yeah? And that is a very good question. That means that we have to work on ourselves to be able to pass on that really very spiritual, high Buddhic ideas, universal ideas, and not try to trim them down. Okay, this is the way I understand it. So that is the way I can express them. So we have to train ourselves to be able to bring the ideas as universal as possible. So that is really something. And now you understand also why in the program we were writing the title Ideals of Humanity in capital letters. So that means if we speak about ideals, we don't speak about, let's say, better roads, more material properties, better food, and so on and so on. We're really speaking about humanity in his most and his optimum level of expression, that Buddhic part in his thinking. Well, okay, for human level, Buddhic part is not very evolved, very active, very much expressed already. If you do our course Universal Wisdom, we, in one of the lessons, we addressed this characteristic, this quality, and try to show what must be done on this als to develop this quality. That is not something what you can do overnight, and like you have done with calculus, you just study how you have to add two numbers, and so on and so on. This takes quite more. This means character improvement, character modification, character grow, yeah? So that the characteristics are more and more coming to the outer side. So this is a very important aspect. So that whole thing what I like to express in this lecture is that process from ideation to idea. Because that process is a much more important process, what is also taking a very, let's say, important role in the coming lectures, to understand that this is taking place. If you study the Mahatma letters and you see how the Mahatmas are working to give ideas to Synod and Hume, the discussions they start for how do we understand it? Is this the right way of understanding? Sometimes refuse to accept a certain conclusion of the masters because they think that is not what we Western people like to accept. Yeah, universal brotherhood was in that time really a point of discussion. By the way, it is now still as well, so there is not much progress made in the 150 years. But this is the idea. So if we speak about ideals, that all ideals on a higher universal level have nothing to do with politics and all that type of things, or having your own profits, your better salary, better position in your company, and so on and so on. Now, being a better human being, being better to radiate on U-turn these ideas so that we come a type of what is called transponder, and passing on of this information. What we receive, we can pass it on to our fellow men. That is, in principle, the activity what we have to develop and deploy. Okay, the Lords of Wisdom and Compassion has been continuously active for 80 million of years and still is, yeah? And so that is my statement here. Ideation is always present. Yeah. So it is not a matter of the transmitter is not there, the transmitter is broken. No, ideation is there. It is just our responsibility to receive it. But the question is, how do we know the qualities of the ideas? Because there are not only one source, in this case where we speak this evening about the Lords of Compassion and Wisdom, but there are other sources what radiates ideas as well. Just look around in our world on this moment, there are unfortunately many examples of it. So what you have to do there is guard your thinking. Guard your thinking, what is coming in? Is this something what I like to be coming in my world of thinking? Or I don't like it, I block it, I don't want to have any, let's say, relation of, I don't want to deal with this type of ideas. Because if we receive them and we think about it and we send them on our turn, without realizing, we amplify it and spread also the negative ones. So, er is in the time from Blavatsky were quite a number of examples that people thinking that they are receiving important information of the masters of compassion and wisdom, but it was opposite. It were not coming from that source. So this point is really something what we have to guard ourselves for. Yeah, not all ideas are universal brotherhood ideas. So universal brotherhood, yeah, and ideas should be a profit for everybody in this world. No one accepted. So if you take this type of, let's say, criteria to check what is coming in, it must be universal, it must be in line with universal brotherhood, and it should be in profit of everybody, yeah? Then I think you have a good mean of filtering this away. So this is a very important thing. Okay, this was my lecture. We take 3 minutes pause, and then I will answer the questions, and after the questions, we start our study. Okay, Bouke.
Yeah, this last second the question comes in. Let's see, you talked about limitations in the Kali Yuga. Does these limitations have to do with our karma from previous times? Because everything accelerates in Kali Yuga, so it also seems a period of opportunities.
Yeah.
So the relation of the cycle that everything goes fast and our own karma, I think, is the key of the question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, let's start. Yes, of course, karma is always working, ook in Kali Yuga. You can say in Kali Yuga, due to the effect that everything is accelerated, yeah, the effects are faster, yeah. You learn also faster where you have to compensate or correct your karmic effects, what you have generated in the past. So that is the positive thing. So let's say the lessons to be learned in Kali Yuga, for a number of people, they like it because they say it is going much faster, yeah, than in other phases. Yeah. Sometimes what I used in Dutch is that I used then the expression of the pressure cooker, yeah, for human beings. That means that pressure cooker is, we know all what it is. So closed system, higher temperatures into the pan, and everything goes faster. There is a high pressure in that pan, and that is exactly the same with Kali Yuga. The effects are faster. So according to de Brugge, Dr. de Brugge say, Chelas like Kali Yuga because the progress they can make in Kali Yuga goes much faster. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so as well the positive as the negative
yes, that
effects.
is,
Yeah.
that's a good one. That is, of course, some people think that only the good things will work out first. No, everything. Yeah. So you get a really, how you say that, a very strong mirror, what reflect exactly how you are. Yeah.
And then a second question, and I remembered that in your Dutch lecture you got the same, that someone who was keen and saw 2 different years of the start of a cycle. So the one was 1898 and the other one was 1889.
Yeah, yeah.
It was not a mistake.
No, not too much. I say it just a little, but I have not emphasized it very much. Dr. Brugge say each cycle have 10% start period and 10%, let's say, running out. If you remember the sheet with the Yugas, there was 400 and 400 as the start and 400 as a stop. Yeah. So, and okay, so that means where do you start to say this is the beginning of the cycle? Yeah. What is Lente? What is spring? When the first flower is seen, one flower is seen, 10 flowers are there, a field of flowers are there. That is exactly the same question. Yeah. In itself, it is not critical at all. Yeah.
Okay, that were the questions for tonight. So I think we can start with the study in a minute.
I think we closing off now with the Gayatri. And I hope we will see each other next week if we speak about keeping the future of humanity protected. Yeah, but okay. First the Gayatri, and thank you very much, and have a nice evening. Yeah. O thou golden sun of most excellent splendor, illumine our hearts and fill our minds, so that we, recognizing our oneness with the divinity, which is the heart of the universe, may see the path before our feet and tread it to those distant goals of perfection, stimulated by thine own radiated light.